Good morning. This is the Great Basin Smoke Dispersion Briefing for Friday, December 7th. We did not do a briefing this past Wednesday due to the President Bush Remembrance Holiday. Looking at precipitation over the past 7 days on the left, everybody received a little bit of precipitation, the heaviest amounts in the green, scattered about the higher terrain of central, especially the western part of Idaho, into parts of northeastern Nevada, throughout the whole spine of the higher terrain of the mountains in Utah and into western Wyoming. So again, mostly confined in the higher terrain, lighter amounts further to the south, heavy amounts of precipitation across the Sierra. Looking at percent of normal, slightly drier than normal for this time of year. A lot of areas not receiving their normal precipitation. A few isolated exceptions across some of those localized higher terrain areas. Looking at snowfall over the past 72 hours, the heaviest in these yellow and dark blues, anywhere from 6 to 8 inches of snow across the high Sierra. Otherwise, lighter amounts, just anywhere from 1 to 3 inches in most other locales where you see the light blue shading. On the right, snow depth and snow cover starting to look more like winter, with heaviest amounts here across the high Sierra, anywhere from 30 to 40 inches of snow depth. Lighter shades of blue here indicate anywhere from about 8 to 20 inches of snowfall across the northern half of Nevada and the higher terrain of Utah. A little bit higher amounts across western Wyoming, and continued widespread snow coverage of 10 to 25 inches across the higher terrain of central Idaho. Looking at satellite imagery, we do see a weak trough low pressure here now moving out of the Great Basin. Another frontal system pushing into the Pacific Northwest, a deeper storm well offshore out into the Pacific. So for this afternoon, there's some residual moisture here across the eastern Great Basin exiting out and to the south. A ridge of high pressure building in across the western portion of the Great Basin. You can see the worst dispersion will be under that ridge of high pressure where you see the purple. Lots of areas in red, not too many areas in the yellow or white. We are climatology-wise, statistic-wise, into the worst part of dispersion season, where we typically have inversions lasting well into the afternoon hours. Transport winds today on the left-hand side, fairly light across Nevada and Utah, picking up a bit across parts of Idaho. You see through here in the green and purplish shades, anywhere from maybe 10 to 20 miles per hour. Mixing heights in the vertical, worst across Nevada and western Utah, better across the far south and across parts of Idaho into western Wyoming. That high pressure system on Saturday builds further northward. So again, on the right hand side, worst dispersion here in the purple. A little moderately better as you head further to the east, but not too much. Again, transport winds fairly light. We see the areas in gray, and also very poor vertical mixing where you see areas of whitish to purple. That high pressure ridge on Sunday starts shifting eastwards, but it's centered right over the Great Basin, more so across the eastern portion this time. Expansion of the poor overall dispersion in areas in the purple. Best areas for dispersion will be in the far south. Transport winds on the left-hand side, fairly light. We see the gray starting to pick up out of the across the Snake River Plain and across parts of the Sierra Front ahead of that next storm system. Vertical mixing on the right-hand side, fairly poor in many areas. The Utah Forecasted Clearing Index, used by many of our burners in Utah, indicates pretty poor air quality and dispersion both Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Not much change overall. 3-day precipitation accumulation from Friday afternoon through Monday afternoon. Just some light amounts across far northwestern Nevada and western Idaho. Otherwise, most areas should stay rain-free. Looking further down the road next week, on Monday, a trough low pressure comes in with some precipitation across northern Nevada, a good portion of Idaho. On the right-hand side, you can see the dispersion areas, not as much purple as before, seeing more areas in the red and yellow under the influence of that low pressure. The only limiting factor, probably cloud cover blotting out the sun, given by those purple areas. Improving air quality, very little here on the right-hand side of purple as we get into Tuesday. We're under that trough low pressure, kind of cleans out the atmosphere. Another storm system here across the Pacific Northwest, waiting in the wings. On Wednesday, that storm system pushes through and pretty quickly across the Great Basin, mostly into the eastern portion of the Great Basin. More areas in the white here, so should see much improved dispersion conditions Wednesday. And Thursday, we see the high pressure starting to build back in. We should see air quality starting and dispersion starting to decrease as we go into Thursday. Precipitation accumulation days 4 and 5, some light amounts across the northern half of the Great Basin, basically a few hundredths to maybe a quarter inch, locally higher amounts across the highest terrain of central Idaho. 8 to 14 day outlook, this takes us from the 14th to the 20th of December, near normal to slightly above normal temperatures across the Great Basin, slightly wetter than normal across at least the western half of the Great Basin, near normal across the east. This concludes our briefing. Have a great day.